Hello folks, it's Gareth. Welcome along to Somewhere on Earth. It is Tuesday, the 14th of October, 2025, and we're in London. And guess what? We have a special co-production for you.
I'm Andrew Grill, and I'm from Digitally Curious. Stay tuned.
There you go. So you're going to hear more from Andrew as we go along, folks. Also with us is Ghislaine Boddington. You all know who Ghislaine is by now. So, Ghislaine, usually I'd say hello, how are you? But how about a much more searching question? Are you digitally curious?
Oh, yes. I'm digitally curious, and I have been for many decades. And my fascination, of course, is this balance, the constant questions in my head every day about the balance between what the digital can do to complement and enhance us humans and our lives. So there's my curiosity all the time going on.
So, coming up today, welcome to the Somewhere on Earth podcast.
And welcome to Digitally Curious.
Yes, folks, two fabulous tech-centred podcasts have joined forces for this special edition as what we in the trade call a pod swap. At Somewhere on Earth, our take on tech is to dig out, those unloved tech stories from around the world, and we talk about how they affect people's lives. How about you, Andrew?
Well, on Digitally Curious, we provide anyone who is curious about technology with some actionable advice for the near-term future.
So in this edition, AI, really, it's not the future anymore, is it? It's here. So how is it changing the way that we all think about the technology? In a really practical, down-to-earth way, big picture, but also down-to-earth. So whether you're a big business or an everyday curious amateur like me, what does it mean?
We're also going to examine the impact of AI on society and how we can live with it rather than have it take over our lives.
Yep, so that's all right here on the Somewhere on Earth
and Digitally Curious podcasts.
Right then, so let's get to know each other a little better. Now, at the top, we've already given a kind of one-sentence outline of our podcast. So, Andrew, our Somewhere on Earth listeners may not have heard Digitally Curious so far. I'm sure some of them have, because if they download digital podcasts, they probably found yours. But for those who haven't, what's your origin story, and why do you think the world needs your podcast?
Really good question, Gareth, and thanks for having me on the pod swap. I've never been on a pod swap, so this is a first for me. But Digitally Curious started because I noticed a massive gap in boardrooms and businesses between the excitement around these emerging technologies and actually knowing what to do with them. I've spent decades working with Fortune 500 companies, and there's a pattern where everyone knows about AI, quantum. They know it's important, but they're paralyzed by not knowing where to start, or importantly, how to make it practical. So my podcast bridges that gap. It's actionable futurism, not just fascinating speculation, but real-world guidance on how to prepare for and implement what's coming next. So, Gareth, for my listeners' benefit, how about Somewhere on Earth? How did you get started?
Yeah, sure. So, hello, Digitally Curious listeners. Thanks for having us, by the way. So, yeah, our kind of origin story is that a while back, we were a technology programme on the BBC World Service called Digital Planet, and we ran for many years, and then that show ended, and then because we loved doing it and we loved our listeners, we took it outside the BBC, and here we are, Somewhere on Earth. And I suppose the clue in many ways is in the name. We are interested in those global technology stories. Like anybody else, of course, we're going to look at what's going on with the usual suspects in Silicon Valley and, all the big sort of tech headlines. But we also like to do those stories that perhaps many other tech podcasts might gloss over, so they could be stories to do with, I like anything, but digital literacy, for instance, or any kind of literacy, or technology helping in vaccine rollouts in the global south. So yeah, we like to think about technology and think about it in a global context. And I guess actually one thing we definitely have in common on our podcast, Andrew, is you talk there about, yes, you do some bigger picture stuff, but you really want to get into how this stuff affects people's lives. And that's very much our tagline as well. We can talk about it, but how is this stuff affecting our lives? So that's who we are as well. And Ghislaine's been with us for years and years. Have I said it all, Ghislaine, or did I miss anything? Is there anything you want to tell the podosphere about who we are, what we do, and why we do it?
No, I think that's great. I think what has been really good coming into Somewhere on Earth from the BBC podcast is, of course, we've worked together as a team a lot. We really enjoy working together, and we've brought a whole load of network contacts with us who are continuing to move forward with us, and listeners too. So it's a very positive community.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's quite good to, I suppose, think about what differentiates our various approaches to talking about technology. And I've listened to a load of your editions now, Andrew, on Digitally Curious, and you have quite a business focus, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've been in business for a long time, but I'm also a public speaker. The wonderful serendipity of having us all on the show today. So Ghislaine and I keep bumping into each other at these AI and technology events, and it was just fantastic to have that sort of synergy there. But I've been asking the question of digital curiosity for some time. I'm a public speaker, not just a podcaster. And what I do, I bound onto stage, and rather than saying it's great to be here in wherever, I ask a cold open. I say, are you digitally curious? And the audience looks at me and says, what's going on here? And then I play a game. So I'm very keen to understand how digitally curious my audience is. But when it comes to the podcast and my approach, I think what sets my approach apart is that I come from technology side with that business implementation rather than just the innovation side. I'm not just talking about what's possible, but what's practical. How do we actually make this work? I've been in those corporate meetings where someone says, we need to, quote, do AI. Everyone nods, but no one actually knows what it means for their business and where to start. So I start and I focus on translating future possibilities into action plans for this week and next.
How about you, Ghislaine, then?
Yeah, I think I'm working more on the multiple little niche innovations and how across the last decades they've kind of clustered and become collective in their impact over time. So my background is actually arts and humanities, and particularly dance and performing arts. And I spent a couple of decades as a creative studio director doing participatory public projects involving telepresence and sensors and early digital interactions of all types. It's all now known as immersive experiences in today's world. So I was in the early pioneer waves of the immersive experience sector. And I guess my knowledge base coming from dance as well is really much about how humans behave with the technological tools. So today I am mainly working as a researcher, thought leader, do a lot of speaking and consulting and conferences and gatherings around the world. What I'm really doing is putting out there and exploring, creating debates in a wide variety of sectors about the future of us as humans and how we will work positively and what is possibly negative for us as humans about today's technologies.
Nicely put, folks. So I suppose just widen this out a little bit then, the global perspectives that we both have on our podcasts and that we bring to our audiences. And, Andrew, if we to come back to you, often speaking to enterprise audiences. So how do you feel that all these different insights, some global insights, how do they complement each other and tell a story for the digitally curious?
What I've found is that enterprise adoption often follows the global trends, and AI is certainly the top of that at the moment. But there's a lag and a lot more due diligence. When I'm working with multinationals, I'm constantly drawing on examples from different markets, what's working in Singapore, we say smart city initiatives and how Nordic countries are handling AI ethics and those sort of things, or how Japanese companies are integrating AI into manufacturing. The global perspective prevents you from getting trapped in your own market's assumptions, whilst enterprise insights show what actually scales, what doesn't, and who's willing to pay for it.
Yeah, and I can imagine there's some fascinating sort of cultural aspects there as well when you think about different business practices between, for instance, Singapore or Japan or Europe or what have you. Ghislaine, how about you? Where does the global perspective come in?
Yes, I think for me, the fascinating side of that, of a global side, is actually seeing the effect that different cultures and religions, different politics in different countries have on how our digital technologies are coming into use today. I mean, I'm very interested also in the difference between cities and rural environments and what the access points are. And of course, a lot of that ends up being about the ethics. For example, how our biometrics are being used in digital identity around the world, which is really topical focus because I'm working with the body. That's a big part of my work. How people use technologies to support their lives or how technologies are being used to negate or misuse people. Yes. So I think we need to constantly remind ourselves, though, that so many people still don't even have digital access at all. I think it's pretty much 3 billion people. It's not that far under half the world. world don't actually have the infrastructure or data access or skills there. But consequently, I'm fascinated by, with Somewhere on Earth and the other work I do, being able to delve into those different global perspectives from different countries, where we are at different points in time.
All right, so I think that sets things up beautifully. But just in a final few words, then, give us the elevator pitch here, Andrew. Why should our audience now compliment their Somewhere on Earth listening with Digitally Curious? Why would they do that?
I think they actually fit well together. If you're listening to Somewhere on Earth, you should be listening to Digitally Curious and vice versa. But I suppose if I was to give you the pitch, in fact, Digitally Curious isn't just a podcast. It spawned a book. So if you like what you've heard, you can buy the book. But if you're curious about technology and frustrated by either overly technical jargon, who isn't, or pie-in-the-sky futurism, Digitally Curious is for you. If you're running a business, working in one, or just trying to understand how these changes affect your life, I and my guests break down complex tech trends into practical insights. And my guests range from AI researchers to retail executives to academics. They're all focused on one question: how are we able to turn digital possibilities into real-world benefits?
And I think similar benefits for your listeners, if they'd like to, Andrew, to coming to Somewhere on Earth. You know, we like to be grounded. We like you to go away with something a little bit tangible that, you can reflect on. And we don't have a book, but we like to think we have a splendid listener community, and we like to include the voice of our audience whenever we can as well. So you'll be with friends if you join us here on Somewhere on Earth. Okie dokie. Now, I'm very interested in the tone of AI discussions, and it's partly because I have a background in science communication, so I think a lot about the way that messages are framed, about how discussions are framed and given a context. So we talk so much about AI, don't we? But I'm going to put it to you, Andrew, and Ghislaine will have a view as well, that the tone of the discussion around AI, I think it's shifted even in the last year. And I wonder if that's your experience as well, Andrew.
The thing is, AI is not new. Only 2 weeks ago was the 75th anniversary of when Dr. Alan Turing wrote his white paper, Computer, Machinery and Intelligence. And the first line of that research paper asked the question, can machines think? So we've been asking that question for 75 years. Only nearly 3 years ago, when ChatGPT bounded onto the stage, was everyone then able to remove the friction and start playing with an AI tool. So it's fascinating. I'm on LinkedIn a lot, and you see people that were social media experts, then they were cryptocurrency experts, then metaverse experts, and now they're AI experts because that's the flavor of the month. And they all tell us that we're all going to be out of jobs and everything's going to change and the world will change. The world will change, but not as fast as some of these air quotes experts expect. I'm in the trenches every day. I've done, probably since ChatGPT came out, 200 talks around the world. I'm speaking to real world companies that are saying, we can't change overnight. We have policies and processes and shareholders, and it's going to be very hard for us to change very quickly. And that is amplified around the world. So what I'm finding is, you're reading about AI changing the world, but actually it's going to change quite slowly. A year ago, every conversation started with AI will change everything. Now it's AI is changing everything, and here's specifically how. We've moved from theory to now implementation. But again, if you read a LinkedIn feed or read the news, a lot of surveys are saying AI projects aren't working. And here's the secret, dirty little secret. Why they're not working is basically people have run into them. They haven't thought about reimagining the business processes that are currently broken, and they're trying to fit this very smart technology on top of an overly broken human process. And so that's what's not happening. Everyone wants to know ROI, and the other thing I talk about when you talk about return on investment is the way we measure return on investment today with technology investments is actually very different to how we'll measure it in the future. So it's very confusing, and I think what your podcast and my podcast are trying to do is peel back those onion layers and make sense and say, what do I really need to understand and what's important now?
Yeah, and of course, there's the monetary capital, monetary return, but then the kind of social value as well, So, wow. Ghislaine, because you're interested in education amongst many things, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I'm education and access. I work in universities a lot. I'm at University of Greenwich as a senior researcher, and do a lot of my work out from that. It's part-time, so I can take it out into public engagement. But I've really been interested in the shifts and the debates within the university sector and in education as a whole about the shifts in that we're going through it in how we teach and how we learn. Yeah, and I think it's going to be a massive shift. I mean, really incredible shift. And of course, some educationalists are battling with that, but there's a lot of very good debate going on about it as well through the university systems, and different academics finding different ways to use it, students adding into that and complementing it. I really agree with Andrew, though. It does take much longer than we all think. Yeah. I was very early working with telepresence, with remote stage connectivity from the early to mid 90s, linking up dance stages actually with full-bodied Zoom really, and of course, you know, the three or 400 of us that were working on that in the 90s across the world, we all thought that it was going to be coming really soon. Everybody would be doing this kind of communication, and definitely by the year 2000. But in fact, as we know, it took a lockdown and COVID and people having to use it that actually, you know, pushed that out into mass usage. And we can see the same with many other things like avatar creation. Andrew's right, until it actually hits the shelves and it's there for mass use, yeah, it's very hard to get anything moving that fast. We see technology as this very fast-moving thing, but I think if you're in it like every day, like we are, it's not. It's actually quite slow to get itself going, even if every day there is some kind of mythical or spectacular new headline around another shift in AI or whatever. So very right about the what comes out on LinkedIn. I think people are grasping around for new stuff actually, and finally we're seeing a lot more about trust and transparency and the words that link into governance but which are coming from a more human base. I was surprised that didn't get there earlier, but we're getting there now on some of those debates.
So Andrew, what surprised you about how people are actually implementing AI day to day?
Well, they've all played with it. 4 years ago, if I was doing an AI talk, it'd be very hard for me to demonstrate how it actually works. But now that we've got ChatGPT and other generative AI tools, if you can send a text message, you can engage an AI platform. So everyone's at least played with it. But often people haven't found it very useful. They haven't had what I call the aha moment. I'll give you a really simple example. A few months ago, I was up in Newcastle talking to a family-run business that provide industrial tools and things like that. And I showed them something quite simple. Before I met with them, I said, can you send me some more information about your company, what your challenges are? They said, we've just done a SWOT analysis on the whole company, 17 departments. We'll send you an Excel worksheet. It had 17,000 cells and about 6,000 rows. It was an incredibly large document. I put it into an AI tool and I said, what are the opportunities for AI for this company given this SWOT analysis? And in 2 minutes, it basically spat out department by department what they could do. In the meeting, I said, can I ask who was responsible for doing the SWOT analysis? And Chris put his hand up. I said, how long did it take you to analyse this? He said, it took me 10 days. So I shocked him. I said, well, while I was ironing my shirt this morning to come here, I put this into the AI tool. And in 2 minutes, and then to test it, we spent the next 2 hours going through department by department what the AI had suggested we could do. And they went, oh, hadn't thought about that, hadn't thought about that, hadn't thought about that. So actually was telling the right thing. Now, it even surprised me that from a very small prompt to an Excel spreadsheet, that was an aha moment. And the CEO, who I was told before I got there was a complete skeptic, I had him at the coffee break. He had 9 or 10 pages of notes and he said, we've got to do this. You need to have that aha moment where you go, I didn't know it could do that. And so what I spend my life doing on the podcast and in front of corporates is bringing them to becoming digitally curious, to trying that at that senior level, and then the sparks fly.
The first time, ChatGPT did a spreadsheet for me, I was like, I think that was an aha moment for me. Like, wow, it does spreadsheets as well. My goodness. Ghislaine.
Yes, no, and I think that for me links into the debate about kind of a de-robotisation of humans, which we've been caught in for the last 20, 30 years, where, you know, a lot of people out there suddenly ended up just gradually, but ended up as jobs where they were literally just robots putting data into cells, like you're saying, and spending 10 days analysing data, yeah. And that's not the good use of the human brain at all. It's not good use of someone's life, yeah. So I think it's great the day-to-day data is kind of being pushed out the way for us and dealt with by this special tool that can analyse and do the analytics so fast for us. I think also it's interesting that we take it to an individual basis, getting help and advice and guidance. What we are seeing coming out from the facts are that ChatGPT and various other chat tools in AI are being used massively by individuals for mental health, for relationship health, for just advice before they go into a difficult scenario, whether it's a home one or a work one, yeah. And I read something about 2 days ago that said that suddenly they've realised in the travel industry that most young people are doing all their travel sort-outs on these chat interfaces because they can do special personalised itinerary creations much faster than they're going to get through a travel agency. So we're seeing a very different kinds of uses being uptaken at a very fast level where people go, oh, I know, I'll just go there and get that sorted. I just did a travel list of packing because I'm just off to Brazil next week for a set of talks and conference things. And because I haven't been very well, I just did my travel and I'm like, oh, I'm doing this again. This is so much easier. I put the itinerary in, the weather, where I was going, what do I need, and it's just come out the whole thing.
Yeah, but buyer beware, folks, that the technology doesn't actually pack your suitcase for you.
No, I wish it did.
Well, give it time. But I guess, in all seriousness, what you're talking about there, Ghislaine, is a form of digital literacy that is emerging. And Andrew's just given that example about going into businesses and saying, hey, you could just crank out a spreadsheet in 2 minutes that's going to really help your business. So, and I think all of us and businesses are on different sort of stages, I suppose, of digital, or I should say AI literacy. But Andrew, that surely places some very big responsibilities as this AI literacy emerges, and big responsibilities on communicators and educators, people like you, I guess.
Absolutely. And so what I'm seeing is that the leaders are actually saying in an organisation, we're going to bring everyone up to the same speed, the same level of AI literacy, because all these things get bandied around. So the leading companies I'm seeing, they're putting everyone through a basic level of training. They're putting the executives through sometimes multi-day level training to get to that level. It's not just about prompt engineering. It's about bringing them to those wow moments when they go, I didn't know I could do that. This is how we're going to actually automate a really boring part of the process we're doing. And it comes back to education as well. What alarms me a bit, I'm hearing time after time that school and university students are seeing AI as cheating because their teachers are saying, don't use it or you're cheating. I think they're missing out because then they come into the workforce and they say, oh, we haven't used AI much because we've been told it's cheating. I use a spell checker. That's not cheating. I draft second drafts of my emails and those sort of things with AI. That's not cheating. I'm using all the resources that are available to me. So what worries me is some of us are itching for a level of AI literacy, and I'm reading all the things that I can. Others are holding back because they think they're not ready for it yet, and that concerns me.
What about you, Ghislaine? I'm thinking about the sort of generational side of things. Is it the usual trope enforced this time that it's the young people who get it and the old people who are still, or the older people who are struggling? Or no, not necessarily, says Ghislaine.
Not necessarily, because it, however much we say it is slower than we want it to be or feel it actually is changing day to day. And if you follow the whole area of prompt engineering, for example, we know that will look, what we're doing today is actually quite naive and quite inefficient. And that will change rapidly in the next few years with different tools coming out that need different ways of prompting to actually be more conversational with you, alongside you, your code companion kind of side. And I think definitely in my university in Greenwich, and many now, not all of them, Andrew's right, and schools are probably struggling a bit more, but we have a very clear AI use guidance now, and students, staff and researchers are allowed to use AI, and there's certain rules, some simple rules, but you have to do documentation to prove what you used it for, and you have to be able to produce your prompts and the printouts, and you can use it as a resource and source alongside it. So And I think that we are, particularly in design and the humanities area, that's also been quite ahead in using AI anyway, in music, in design, in animation, etc. These are quite often, I mean, for me, I've been working with generative AI since the mid-90s, yeah, in terms of audiovisual work, yeah, in various, we called it advanced machine learning, yeah, but basically it's generative AI now, yeah. So I think that, say, for a young animator, it's at the base of all the 6 or 7 softwares that they are learning, and they have to have those skills. Andrew's absolutely right to go out into the workplace and say, yes, I do have these skills behind me. So do the young marketing lot and the advertising, young advertising, creative advertising. So we're seeing it shift. It is redefining how we learn and how we're creating and how we're teaching and exchanging, but that's going to continue to shift. And I think there's some core skills that we will always retain as humans alongside AI, which include reasoning, critical reflection, the wisdom that humans can add to it. Yeah, it's about togetherness, really.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like AI substituting us, and that's always been your line with Ghislaine. Every time, right years ago, we were talking about this, and you always said that it's a collaborative thing between the human and the machine. And I really love what you were saying there about the guidelines at your university. We have similar ones at the university where I work about transparency. Really, what we're talking about. Show us your prompts, show us the outputs, show us how you and the AI, the chatbot, got to this particular outcome. And I think inculcating that accountability and transparency at the educational level is just one of many good practices that learners can take with them out into the world, into which, of course, they'll be going into careers where they're going to be using these tools, so they may as well have been using them while they were at college. Ghislaine, while you have the floor, I want to go now towards the body as well. This is very much your work, the body in the digital. It's a lovely phrase. Tell me about how that whole idea, the body in the digital, applies to AI-driven creativity and interaction.
It's been an interesting journey for me, because coming from dance background and the body side, of course, that is my first concern, is the living body. And that's what I love, is us as living beings and presence, and, our heartbeats, our sweating, our emotions, everything. That's the important bit, for me, of life, life together and meeting and connecting with people. So I've been working really since the early 90s, looking at how the digital technologies that we were building were going to interface with that in a virtual physical blending way. That's been my core work, and I think that really looking at how we build trust and intimacy and into that connectivity. So it's been complicated, because in the 90s it was, I think people thought I was a bit mad, maverick, very maverick, and it was quite ignored in many sectors. But in fact, it's come right through to the forefront, and I'm glad I stuck to my beliefs, because, of course, it's right there with health tech, with the whole areas of the telepresence, the way that we build up this connectivity across the world. So I'm mainly looking at that, how we represent ourselves as digital humans out there, and at the moment working on the speculative research area, which people love talking about, which is, what if you had your own digital human twin from birth till death, and what that would mean, and talking a lot with very different sectors, because I work across a whole range of sectors, about how would you work with a digital human twin throughout your life that was yours, that was your large language model, which was your co-creator, and how that would be personalised. I mean, the most obvious example is health, because we all understand that a bit from the fitness sector, how we actually work and start to see our data telling us, predictive data telling us, oh, well, you could try and prevent this if you start now, by cutting down on the nice things like chocolate and wine. But anyway, putting that aside, it's about how we'll learn to work with, and again, going back to that word, co-creator, companion, with our digital human equivalents.
Yeah, I certainly don't intend to give up chocolate or wine anytime soon. Andrew, you look at this trust gap, don't you? This phrase, the trust gap between humans and machines. So what kind of attitudes do you see? And I'm interested in how they vary between, for instance, the corporates and consumers.
Well, one thing we're going to hear a lot more about in 2025 and beyond is the notion of agentic AI or AI agents. And this is where they can autonomously perform things. So Ghislaine was talking about how she's doing a packing list. While we can't have the suitcase packed yet, we could be at a point where the travel agent, the AI travel agent, basically books the flight for you and everything else. That's going to require a lot of trust. So right now I trust an AI agent to book a calendar event. I trust an AI agent to start up a podcast. Do I trust it with my bank account just yet to actually pay for the... Not just yet. And so we need to have a high level of trust between people and machines. And I think that's where we're going to see people really step back and say, I'm not quite ready for that yet. It can do menial tasks, but if you're trusting me with money or a job and those sort of things, and I think consumers are a little bit more open to that. When it comes to corporates, though, GDPR and those sort of things, if you do the wrong thing, you can be fined a lot of money. So I think at the moment people are holding back because they don't trust the machines because they're essentially black boxes. They don't know what input will actually generate which output. And that's, I think, a big issue at the moment.
Yeah, which is probably quite a good thing, isn't it, Andrew? You know, I mean, we should probably be reassured that corporates aren't just saying, "Oh well, there's an app for that. We'll just throw it at the machine and everything will be okay." You know, a certain amount.
I think the legal and compliance departments have a lot to say about that.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like, can we keep our jobs? So much food for thought there. But let's kind of get into a bit of a kind of wrapping up phase here, if we may. And I'm just interested, coming back to you, Andrew, about, say, one upcoming tech development that you are especially curious about, you're digitally curious about.
Well, I remain curious about this notion of agentic AI or AI agents. They're not just chatbots, they're AI systems that can actually take action on your behalf. So imagine having this AI system that doesn't just answer questions, but books the travel, negotiate with suppliers, manages your calendar and all your life admin by coordinating with other people's AI agents. I think we're on the cusp of a world where AI doesn't just inform decisions, but actually implements them. That's both exciting and terribly and a little bit terrifying as well. I predicted way back in 2018 that one day we'd be marketing to AI agents and marketing to robots. We're getting very close to this today.
Oh, they don't call you a futurist for nothing, do they? Good work, Andrew, on that 2018 prediction. Ghislaine, do you have anything to add to that? Anything that you're looking at? I know in the world of body tech, for instance, it's a huge field. Anything that you're either predicting or curious about or worried about as we face the future?
No, I think I follow through on that because the digital human twin work I'm doing is entirely around the AI personalised agent, basically. And I really can see what Andrew's saying there around the marketing to the AI agents. I can see that discussion starting up in the marketing sector, in the job descriptions, in the how we're going to write, how we do this copy. What comes up in my research, in the market research groups I do, and the one-to-one interviews of experts is some very interesting discussions about, but what if my digital human twin, actually is talking to your digital human twin and making decisions between them, which neither of us are involved in, and it becomes more complex than that. I mean, some of the younger students will say, what if my digital human twin decided to date your digital human twin and didn't tell us? Or what if my digital human twin carries my biases and takes that through and it uses my bias against your digital human twin? So these are they become very psychologically layered because you're dealing with the physical self and the virtual self, which are personalized. The marketing will be highly personalised into those scenarios, and actually all the actions from it will get very, very complicated. Yeah. So I think we've got a lot further to go looking at that trust and transparency side that Andrew's mentioned, and also to make sure that we are getting the psychology. We're going much more into the humanities discussion now about AI, and people for 2-3 years ago were just batting it off and going, oh, well, we don't need you creatives anymore. We don't need the humanities discussion. In fact, it's going to end up, I think, within a year, much more human-led. What is this going to be? How is this going to be for us humans, and how can we make this safe and positive?
Yeah, but it has to be front and centre, absolutely. So just before we leave it then, I think we should set our combined listeners to these two podcasts a little bit of homework. So is there any suggested reading or suggested listening from you, Andrew, out of your different episodes then? Do you have one that, that would be a good gateway into Digitally Curious?
I have one favourite, and because it's a little bit different for just talking about AI. It's from Karen Jacobson, who was the Aussie Karen, the initial first Australian voice for Siri, way before AI cloning happened. And she talks about the day that she had done some voice samples, and then years later, someone called her in the car and said, "I've just heard you on my iPhone." And she talks about how that happened. Now, it wouldn't happen today because you have voice clones, but she's made a whole career out of that. And it's just a fascinating human meets technology story from the late 90s.
Yeah, it's a lovely story. There's a brilliant bit in the podcast where Karen talks about how her son, who was 6 at the time, said it's something like, "You're in everybody's phone, aren't you, Mummy?" And assumed that everybody else, that she was in everybody else's phone or something, you know. It's really brought it home to her. There's a lovely addition, so go ahead and listen to that. And I was going to say, digitally curious listeners, if you are now curious about Somewhere on Earth, if you're looking for somewhere to start, you might want to go back to around the middle of the year, maybe a bit earlier, where we did a special edition from the Web Summit in Brazil, and we had Brittany Kaiser on the show. So she's of hashtag Own Your Own Data, and she was also like a whistleblower around Cambridge Analytica, you know, became quite big, so quite notorious around that. Brilliant speaker. So Brittany's on the show. And also we had Roost Edge, who were very, very good also on that idea of data ownership and data generation and so on. It was in front of an audience. There was a real vibe. It was really lively, great fun. And that might give you a bit of an idea of what we're into. So there we go. I think we'll leave it, other than to give certainly our usual Somewhere on Earth housekeeping that we do at the end, a few little reminders about who's who and what you need to do and all that kind of stuff. So we are part of the Evergreen Podcast Network. A huge thanks to our sponsors, Roost and Sazient. Our production manager is Liz Toohey. The editor is Anya Literovich. You've also, of course, heard from Ghislaine Boddington today, and Andrew as well. We've been hearing from him. Andrew Grill, who's with Digitally Curious, and I'm Gareth. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.